Log on to patreon.com/Dane Calloway or paypal.me/Dane Calloway to support me, my channel, and my content. Any amount is much appreciated, and I humbly thank you. According to the IRS, governmental records and other identifying documents indicates that well over 90 million tax-paying U.S. citizens are overpaying their income taxes each year. Typically, this happens because you're having too much taken out of your paycheck each period. These taxpayers are who Uncle Sam loves, and not only that, so does the taxpayer's employer. Those extra dollars are literally a free loan towards the federal government. And that is only if your employers report those extra dollars back to the IRS. Millions of taxpayers would just simply trust that their employers are accurately following federally regulated protocol. But according to private investigative researchers and many politicians, this regulatory compliance tends to be circumvented by many employers, and in most cases on a monthly basis. Now you might be wondering why. Well, I will state a two-part answer to this question. First, I must make mention of how most of these, quote, lawful regulations are disingenuously implemented into effect merely under the color of law. For example, I recently crafted a poll to my followers on Facebook, inquiring about how many people were truly aware of whom they actually pay their taxes to. Now, I am more than sure that your answer will be the IRS, right? But surprisingly enough, that answer is unknowingly incorrect. This can be confusing and startling to many that have just heard about this for the very first time. So I will elaborate more on this subject right now. Taxpayers that are earning less than approximately $114,000 a year are literally paying their taxes to their employers. Wait, it gets worse. Your employers does have to pay their own taxes to the IRS, but you as the employee must pay that portion as well. Not only that, the employer's portion that you must pay is equal to the exact same amount of the original portion that you're already paying for your own individual taxes from your wages.
Tax is regressive because companies just pass the costs on to consumers. Tax is regressive because companies just pass the costs on to consumers. Can I argue that taxes on me are bad because I just pass the costs on to my employer in the form of demanding higher wages?
Mr. Michael?
Careful now.
Chairman, Representative Lett. In fact, there is an argument about that, and I think it's one of the reasons why employers are concerned. Normally you would think, hey, an employer is not concerned about the individual income tax because that tax is imposed on its employees. It's because that tax is imposed on its employees. And so therefore, why do they care? Well, they do care to a certain extent because to the extent that labor is mobile and moves from state to state, and they have to attract, and one of the things that they're forced to do is to attract good, skilled labor because that's the way they succeed as a business. And if in fact, one state has a much higher income tax than another state, the only way they can attract labor from a national pool would be to raise compensation to offset the fact that you have a higher income tax. So there's some economic theory that would in fact suggest that what you're saying is true. What you're saying is true. What you're saying is true.
Now let's stop it right there so that I may shine a much brighter light on what he just stated here. Employers have numerous payroll tax withholding and payroll obligations. These taxes are most commonly known as Social Security tax, Medicare tax, payroll taxes, federal payroll taxes, and the FICA Withholding Tax, which is the most important. An employer's federal payroll tax responsibilities include withholding from an employee's compensation and paying an employer's contribution for Social Security and Medicare taxes under the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, also known as the FICA. The Federal Insurance Contributions Act is the, quote, federal lawful code managed under the color of law that requires you to pay 3 separate taxes from the wages you pay to your employers. In other words, the FICA is the requirement of withholding from an employee's wages, and as well as an employer's portion of the taxes that must be paid by the employees. Since I've covered the grounds with asphalt, now it's time to mark the pavement so you can see clearly where this road is going. Buckle up, safety first. The second half of my 2-part answer is pretty simple, straightforward, and definitely the most important part of this segment because it plays a huge, relevant, but so evilly manipulative factor surrounding our everyday lives.
There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation for services. There is no law.
Why do you think you've been able to get away with not paying or filing your income taxes for so long?
Well, first of all, I've not gotten away with anything. I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm simply asking the IRS to show me the laws that apparently require me to do these things, and they are suspiciously reticent to answer questions from me, and of course there are millions of other people, many other organizations who have attempted to get answers. They act very suspiciously when asked to simply sit down at the table with the American people and discuss what their obligations are. Rather than pulling up a chair, they pull out a club.
They're calling us tax cheats, they're calling us fanatics, they're calling us weirdos. I don't care what you call me, but I have one question. Where is the law? Show me the law.
These liens that are recorded against people by the government for tax liens are nothing more than allegations. They are non-substantive. They have never been determined by a neutral third party, such as a court, to have one shred of validity.
If you ever get a notice of an audit or anything else, the first thing you should do is a Freedom of Information Act request for records that they're using to substantiate or justify the audit.
Can I ask you, why did it take so long from the first time we knew that this was happening to got the report done? The president said just the other day, I think it was yesterday, that he just got a look at the report, and that's the first time he knew anything about it.
Well, first,
other than reading it in the papers, I guess.
Are you asking how?
Yeah. So, have you ever seen that magnitude before? Anything
no,
this magnitude?
No.
It's never come up before.
No, it has not.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Now, you've been on the job for quite some years, but the current job you're in is from November 9th, 2012. So, is that right? So you just took over as acting commissioner?
In November of 12. Yes,
okay.
I have both jobs.
All right, but before that, one of your jobs, you were the Commissioner of Tax Exempt and Government Entitled Entities Division. So you actually were in the job that we're questioning now, that group of what was happening there. So would you have been in Cincinnati?
No.
You were never in Cincinnati?
No.
So is Cincinnati some outpost?
So obviously the IRS is a nationwide organization.
Oh, I know, I understand that. I understand that,
and
I want to tell you, listen, believe me, if you think it's uncomfortable sitting over there, you ought to be a private individual when the IRS is across from you questioning. So I got to tell you, it's uncomfortable for everybody. But my question, more specifically, is: so how did Cincinnati get to where they are? How did they develop that strategy, and how did they know to go after these certain groups? How did they target those folks? That just a couple rookies just showed up, didn't really know what they were doing.
So again, I would point to the TIGTA report on what happened.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But I'm hearing these are low-level people that push the wrong button. Now, when Cincinnati can't figure out, who do they confer with? Who's their counsel when they're looking at these entities, tax-exempt entities? Does it come back here to D.C.?
There's two possibilities.
Yes or no? Does it come back to D.C.?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So D.C. and Cincinnati, we're pretty well connected in understanding what's going on. So this doesn't come as a great shock to anybody. In fact, I would say it doesn't come as a shock. You know what it does for the American people? It really establishes what they feared so often. I have a grandson who's afraid to get out of bed at night because he thinks there's somebody under the bed that's going to grab him. And I think most Americans feel that way about the IRS. I mean, you get a letter from you folks or a phone call, it's with terror that you look at it. And now this kind of reconfirms that, you know what? They can do almost anything they want to anybody they want, anytime they want. This is very chilling for the American people. Now, I know that where you're at, you're resigning, you're walking away from it. But this is not going to go away. This is a Pandora's box that has been opened, and I don't think we can get the lid back on it. And I don't believe that the White House just found out about this in a news report. The president happened to grab a TV shot or just read Mr. George's report and said, you know what, anybody heard about this before? I'm just getting the first look at this. Shouldn't somebody be responsible? And I'm thinking maybe the executive office, maybe Treasury falls in there. I'm not sure that we understand how that organizational chart works, but I am really concerned. Now, I got to tell you, where you're sitting, you should be outraged, but you're not. The American people should be outraged, and they are. And this committee, this has nothing to do with political parties. This has to do with highly targeted groups. This reconfirms everything that the American public believes. This is a huge blow to the faith and trust the American people have in their government. Is there any limit to the scope of where you folks can go? Is there anything at all? Is there any way that we could ask you, is there any question that you shouldn't have asked? My goodness, how much money do you have in your wallet? Who do you get emails from? Whose sign do you put up in your front yard? This is a tax question? And you don't think that's intimidating? It's sure as hell intimidating. And I don't know that I got any answers from you today. And I don't know that what Mr. George has done is great work. But you know what? There's a heck of a lot more that has to come out in this. And anybody to sit here today and listen to what you have to say, I am more concerned today than I was before. And the fact that you all can do just about anything you want to anybody, you know, you can put anybody out of business that you want anytime you want. And I got to tell you, you talked about you're a horribly run organization. If you're on the other side of the fence, you're not given that excuse. And when the IRS comes in, you're not allowed to be shoddy. You're not allowed to be run horribly. You're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to do one damn thing that doesn't come in compliance. If you do, you're held responsible right then. I just think the American people have seen what's going on right now in their government. This is absolutely an overreach, and this is an outrage for all America. I yield back.
All right. Mr. Griffin is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
Right. The committee will come to order.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code, that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. Maybe I don't know what it is right then as he was speaking to me, but sure. So naively, I agreed to go off and research it and get back to him. 3.5 months later, I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know. And I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
I had to leave the IRS because I presented evidence that I had accumulated indicating that the agency was violating the law and violating people's rights. And I asked the agency for a response to my sincere concerns. And the answer I got was that they would not respond to my concerns and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation.
But We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put a full-page ad in the USA Today on July 7th, 2000. And within the body of that ad was a $50,000 challenge for anyone that could show the law. And to me, $50,000 is a lot of money. So I went after that and did the research based on the fact that I thought, let's put this baby to bed. I'm hearing all these rumors, you know, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I'll answer these people's questions they're asking me, and then I'll win this $50,000. And, you know, based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress, we've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.